Let's play out a scenario I'm sure some of you are familiar with. You download After Effects to your computer after seeing all of these amazing Instagram edits and you want to start making edits of your own. So you finally open up After Effects and create a new project file, but upon seeing how complex the layout is, you feel intimidated and immediately close it. I promise that despite how scary After Effects looks, it's really not that hard to use. Today I'm going to teach you about the basics of After Effects, including how to navigate the layout, create some simple transitions, and use the cool effects it offers. Let's get started. So when you first open After Effects, you're going to click on New Project. From here, you want to go up here to the top and click on Composition, New Composition, and right now I'm going to do a square. So a square is anything that has the same width and height, so I'm just going to do 1080 by 1080. As you can see, our composition is in a square. Let's start over here on the left-hand side. This is where all your media is, so your photos, videos, and compositions. Right now, all I have is our first composition, so I'm going to be adding some photos. I'm just going to drag some photos from my desktop, so I'm just going to drag that into this little square over here. Now, I'm just going to drag my photos down here into what is called the timeline. As you can see, our timeline is measured in seconds, so this little blue thing right here is called your current time indicator, and you basically drag it throughout your timeline just to see different parts of your project. So I'm just going to drag this photo until it hits the current time indicator. I realized by the length of my timeline that my composition was 40 seconds long, but since I'm only doing one transition, I want to shorten this time. I'm going to go up to Composition, Composition Settings, and change the time from 40 seconds to 5 seconds. So right now, as you can see, this says full, and this means full resolution, so this display right here is in really good quality. I'm actually going to change this to quarter. The resolution obviously appears more pixelated, but this just allows for a quicker playback time when you're rewatching your edits to see if your transitions look good. I'm going to hit the space bar and just see how long I want my picture to last. So I want it to last that long, so I'm going to hit Shift-Command-D, and I have successfully cut my photo. I am going to delete the excess. Now I'm going to drag my second picture up to the time indicator, and I'm going to make it the same length. Now that we have our photos cut, let's just explore the layout of After Effects a little bit. So in your upper left-hand corner, you have all of your tools. Right now, I am on the selection tool, which is basically just a normal pointer tool. You can click on things, you can drag things, etc. Next to that is our hand tool, and this just helps you wiggle around the display. This is your zoom tool, and it just allows you to magnify in on your display. I have literally never used these three in my life, so let's move on. This is your rectangle masking tool, and it basically just allows you to mask your photo in the shape of a rectangle. Similarly, this is your pen tool. It allows you to mask as well, but you create your own points. So let's say I just wanted to create a mask of KJ. I'm just going to add the points around him, and I'm going to connect my last point to my first point, and there you have it. This is your text tool. All you have to do is click once on your display, and you can just type something, and it appears on your timeline as a text layer. I have never used these four things in my life as well. Lastly, this is your puppet pin tool, and this is basically what it allows you to do. Now this little area over here looks really intimidating because there are so many different categories, but I really only use two of these categories, which is Effects and Presets and the Character tool for my text layers. So if you click on Effects and Presets, there are many different categories. All you have to do is search what effect you want, and to apply it to one of your photos, you just hold down on it and drag it in there. Now let's head down here to perhaps the most important aspect of After Effects, our timeline. So first, as you see, we have our two photos, and connected to both photo segments are the names of the photo, three little boxes, and a caret. First, let's caret down on this photo. When you caret down, you get a little thing that says transform. And if you caret down on transform, here are literally all the transformations you need to do basic transitions. You have position, which is used for slides, scale, which is used for zoom in and zoom out, rotations, which are used for obviously rotations, and opacity, which you can use in many different ways. Moreover, let's add warp to this clip one more time. As you can see up here, it switches from project with all your media to this thing called effects control and the name of the photo. When you're clicked on this, you're going to see all the effects that are applied to your photo. Adding on to this, once you add an effect to your photo, when you caret down, instead of just saying transform, it's going to say effects. And when you caret down here, all of your effects are going to show up. So right now, all we have is warp. Alright, now let's talk about these boxes. These boxes correspond to these little buttons right here. The only two I really use are Draft 3D and Motion Blur. So enabling Draft 3D allows you to do 3D transitions like this one and this one, and this one. Moreover, motion blur applies a blur when your photo or video is in motion, hence the name. So when you're doing really any sort of transition, you want to have this applied to make it look smooth. So by clicking on these two, they are turned on. However, they are not yet applied to our photos. To apply them to our photos, we just have to click on the two little boxes under the little motion blur icon and the two little boxes under the Draft 3D icon. So now we'll see these in work when we start doing our transitions. And the last really important aspect of After Effects is the graph editor. So we are going to see what this looks like when we do our transitions. Alright, enough said, let's do our transitions. So as you can see, both of our photos really don't fit the proportion of a square. So what we're going to do is click on the photo, and if you click the letter S on your keyboard, it automatically brings you to scale under transformation. So to make these photos fit the composition, we are just going to zoom in. We are going to do the same for this one. Now we need to do something called pre-composing.
Pre-composing allows us to fit our photos into the shape of a square and get rid of the excess on the top, bottom, and sides.
So you're going to right click, pre-compose, and you're going to click on this second dot and click OK. And then you are just going to cut it again. In this version, your photo fits the dimensions of a square perfectly. So now we are going to add our first effect, and that is our mirror edges effect. In effects and presets, we are going to search up motion tile, and we are going to drag that into both of our photos. I'm going to show you how this works by zooming out the photo a little bit. When you expand the output width and height, this is what it looks like. I like to stick with the settings 250 by 250, so you can either have it in a tile-like pattern like this, or you can click on mirror edges and have it look like this. Now I'm just going to bring my scale back to 100. And now if I want to slide it, we have mirror edges. If I want to rotate it, we also have mirror edges. I'm going to do the same thing for this photo. I also forgot to mention, once you pre-compose, it's an entirely new photo, so your motion blur and Draft 3D will no longer be enabled, so you just have to re-enable that. Alright, let's begin our first transition. Transitions are created by these things called keyframes, and they're basically just values for your transformation. For example, while a scale value of 100 will make my photo look like this, a scale value of 200 will zoom in my photo. For our first transition, we are just going to do a simple rotation. So you want your first keyframe or value to be towards the beginning of your clip. Now, to add your first keyframe, you're going to click on the little clock right next to where it says Z rotation. As you can see, that adds a little blue diamond. Now, because we are going into a rotation, we first want the photo to be at a rotation of 0 and then rotate to maybe 50 or 60 degrees clockwise. Next, we are going to drag the current time indicator to the very end of the clip where we can still see the same picture. So not right here, but right here. To add another keyframe, you just have to click on this diamond to the far left of where it says Z rotation. I typically like to go for plus 50 when I'm going into rotation, so you're just going to type in plus 50 where it says 0. So you're going to highlight both of your keyframes, right click, keyframe assistance, easy ease. And your diamonds will turn into hourglasses. You're going to just click on one of the hourglasses, it doesn't matter which one, and you're going to go to your graph editor. So just to make it simple, I'm going to do this in terms of speed graph because it's a lot easier. So if your graph looks something like this, you should go down here, and instead of being on value graph, you should click edit speed graph. So when you're doing a transition, you want it to first slowly ease into a rotation, and then towards the end, you want it to start rotating really fast so that the transition between your first picture and your second picture is seamless. So to achieve that smoothness, instead of having a speed graph curve that goes like this, you're going to take this yellow knob and push it all the way to the right. Then you're going to take this one and push it all the way to the right as well. And your speed graph should look something like this. It's flat here and then it just accelerates. And so the amazing part about these After Effects graphs is that any clip that is going into a transition, it doesn't matter if it's going into a slide, into a rotation, into a zoom, its speed graph is always going to look like this. So back to our rotation. Now that we have the first clip done, we are going to do the second clip. So we're going to start at the very start of this picture, and we're just going to click R on the keyboard for rotation, and all of your rotations show up. We are doing Z rotation, so we are going to click the clock here to add a keyframe. So since we're going clockwise, your first picture has to be plus 50, but your second picture has to be negative 50. The absolute value of both of your rotational values doesn't have to be the same. For example, I could do plus 50 and negative 70, but one always has to be positive and one always has to be negative. So I'm just going to set this to negative 50. Then you're going to drag your current time indicator towards the end of the clip. You're going to add another keyframe, and you're going to make this 0. Now we're going to do the same thing as last time. We're going to highlight, right-click, keyframe assistant, easy ease, and go to our graph editor. So this graph is just going to be the exact opposite of our first rotation graph. We're going to push everything to the left. So now let's just watch. And there you have it, the basics of After Effects transitions. I'm also going to walk you guys through position slides and zoom ins, but if you get the gist of it and you just want to head on over to the effects section of this video, I'll have the timestamp. So let's do a position to the right. So you're first going to keyframe your position, you're going to drag your current time indicator to the end of the clip, and you're going to keyframe again. This first position value has to do with left and right shifts, and the second one has to do with up and down. This last one has to do with 3D, but again, we're not really going to get into that. So I'm going to slide right, so I'm just going to increase this value to around 900. We are going to keyframe, easy ease, and go to our graph editor. Now, whenever you're going into a transition, remember, always the same speed graph, going to the right. Now, if this picture is sliding right, we want this photo to start out towards the left and then come to the center. So we're going to add our first position keyframe, and we are going to push this left by decreasing our 540 value. Now we're going to drag it towards the end of the clip, keyframe again, and bring this back to its original value of 540. And since we're coming out of a transition, the graph is always the same, we are going to push this to the left. And there you have it, your slide. Lastly, I'm going to teach you guys a zoom in. Again, bring your time indicator towards the beginning of the clip, keyframe your scale, so we're going to drag it to the end of the clip, and I'm going to make the value around 200. Going into a transition, so we're going to push this to the right. So when you're doing a zoom in, your second clip should start more zoomed out, and then it's going to come forward to its original position. So we're going to keyframe the scale, and I'm going to set this to around 70. Now I'm going to bring it to the end of the clip, keyframe, and I'm going to bring this back to 100. And we're going to bring this to the left. And that is your zoom in. And to close this video off, I'm just going to go through some of my favorite effects. First one is light rays. So this is what light rays look like. I'm going to drag that into your photo. So to do this, I'm going to drag my time indicator to the beginning of my clip, and I want to go from the top of his head to his cheek. So I'm going to bring this first here, and you're going to keyframe the center here. You're going to drag it towards the end, and you're just going to drag it to a different location. And it should follow the correct path. We also have another favorite effect of mine, which is turbulent displace. Turbulent displace looks like this. I first keyframe my amount at 50, drag it to the end, and then bring that to 0. I like to make my size around 250 to 300, and I don't keyframe that. Then I keyframe my offset turbulence, and I click right here, and I start at the middle, then I drag it towards the end, and I click here again, and I bring that either to the left or down, but it all depends on how it looks relative to the photo. So I'm just going to bring it to the left. And sometimes it's going to look a little bit silly. So if you want to change kind of the configuration of the warp, you can always go to evolution and just bring that around, and it's going to warp the photo in different ways.
If you've made it to the end of this video, I want to thank you so much for watching, and I hope it was helpful. There were a lot of things I wanted to add, but I didn't want to make it too confusing or complex. So if you guys want other videos on anything else, any other effects, layers, a whole video on 3D, anything, just let me know in the comments, because I would love to make more. I just didn't want to make this basics video a little bit too complicated. But yeah, I hope it was helpful, and thank you for watching.